That Mirzapur was known for Marvin Devasini, OBT carpets, carpet manufacture, carpet exports, as also Lai Chana and Gur and the Mirzapuri Lathi. I take you back to the year 1967 when an uprising happened of the peasantry in Naxal Badi, West Bengal. And at that point of time, they set the police station Naxal Badi on fire. That is why the thing started, and after 2 years, there was the formation of the CPI-ML. And then the Naxal Badi movement, when it started, Ajit Dovalji, who was the director of the IB, in the DG's meeting said that 40% of India's land mass is impacted directly by Naxal problem. Left-wing extremism is almost breathing its last. And as our Honorable Home Minister has said, that Naxal movement will come to an end by early next year. What is common between Hamas and Kashmir? Only one thing is common. Radical Islam, violence, anti-Hindu sentiment, anti-Israel sentiment. So what is more important? Rule of law is important, or being branded as Islamophobe is important? I again would say that these dating apps, these social media platforms, a few of them, and a few matrimonial sites are often the sites for radicalization. Conversion laws are religion neutral. They don't say that a religion is converted.
Namaste, my name is Neena Rai, and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic on our show, The Power Table with Neena Rai. Today's topic is radicalization. Since India became independent 77 years ago, we've had many different types of radicalizations in our country. One of the first radicalizations that we experienced is the left-wing extremism or Naxalism. And another that we are experiencing, or the world at present is experiencing, is Islamic radicalization. In between these two radicalizations, one of the biggest prices are being given by the women of the world, the women and children of the world who are the biggest sufferers. And today, here to guide us on this path, we have with us the ex-DGP of UP, Mr. Vikram Singh, who also holds a PhD, so he's Dr. Vikram Singh, and I would like to welcome him on our show to discuss these very heavy topics. Namaste, sir. Because we are going to discuss such heavy topics today, my first question to you is a light and easy question. And I want to know, you started your career with Mirzapur. You were the ASP of Mirzapur. I want to know, how close is the Mirzapur that you worked in to the Mirzapur portrayed in the TV shows?
Namaskar, Neha ji. I'm very grateful that you could spare time to come, visit, and have an interaction and the power table.
No, sir, the honor is ours.
God bless you.
Sharminda mat kariye.
God bless you.
Thank you,
God
sir.
bless you. Mirzapur then was very different from what it is, and I would say comparison should be between comparables.
Okay.
That Mirzapur was known for Marvin Devasini, OBT carpets,
Yes.
carpet manufacture,
Yes.
carpet exports, as also Lai Chana and Gur and the Mirzapuri Lathi. Of course, I had 5 police stations with me. Very unusual for the fresh ASP to have 5. Normally they had the police lines and 1 or 2 police stations. I had 5, which included Vindhyachal, Kotwali Dehat, Kotwali Shehar, Cheel and Marihan. Marihan was spelled in the British Times, and I still remember Mary and Joseph's Mary Han. It was not Marihan, it was Mary Han. But the gulab jamuns of Marihan were absolutely superb.
So there was no katta business going on there.
Heavens forbid, where I am there can be no kattas. Of course, the first encounter of Bakhedi also happened in the Vindhyachal mountains also.
Okay.
There was, of course, that is what the police is there for.
Okay.
But there was no menace, to the extent that there was no threat to society as such.
Okay.
Of course, it was there, crime was there, but absolutely under control.
Okay. My first question to you is, why is left-wing extremism called Naxalism in India?
I take you back to the year 1967.
Okay.
When an uprising happened of the peasantry in Naxal Badi, West Bengal.
Okay.
And at that point of time, they set the police station Naxal body on fire.
Okay.
That is why the thing started. And after 2 years, there was the formation of the CPI-ML. And then the Naxal Bari movement, when that started, what we call left-wing extremism, LWE, Naxalism, and also the red problem, the red corridor that emerged. And then at a given point of time, you'll be shocked to know that Ajit Dovalji, who was the director of the IB, in the DG's meeting said, in our presence, I was the DGP of Uttar Pradesh in the DG's conference, and Shri Manmohan Singh ji as the Prime Minister, that 40% of India's land mass is impacted directly by Naxal problem.
40% of India's
Land mass.
And this is what the red corridor is.
Red corridor is a part of that 40% because they say Pashupati to Tirupati.
Yes.
Starting from Pashupati in Nepal to Tirupati in extreme south in the country,
Yes.
that they would have carved out a red corridor and parceling off and segregating the entire mineral-rich part of the country.
So I want to understand two things from what you have said. First of all is, what do they mean by the red corridor and why is it called the red corridor? And secondly, what does it have to do with the mineral-rich area of India?
Red corridor would mean that the impact of the communist, which is a synonym, a euphemism for the communists.
Okay.
So the red corridor would signify the presence and the overbearing existence and impact and the influence of the communists there.
Okay.
The mineral rich, nobody operates in vacuum, howsoever.
Okay.
Whether it is howsoever laudable and philanthropic the aim is to liberate the peasantry and the farmers, the end is the law of economics.
Okay.
Would you for a moment think that they were doing out of charity? Their cohorts at a given point of time, their turnovers was higher than that of many multinationals in the country.
Their turnover, how would you calculate the turnover?
By rule of thumb, approximation.
Okay.
Extortion money, then contract killing, protection money, land use. This would translate if anybody, look at the zamindari that you would hold if you are in possession or have control over 40% of the land masses. Then you not only be getting protection money from landowners, from factories, from business establishment, everybody, if they wanted to exist, had a protection money that they had to give to the Naxals. And that is what translated into thousands of crores.
Where was this money going?
This was money channeled. They had a very good system of money collection going into the cadres. In fact, when I arrested quite a few of their cadres, they had a system on MS Excel sheets.
Wow.
And they incorporated every single expenditure, even if they had paid 20 rupees by way of bribe to a constable. Police constable Mohan Lal ko rishwat 20 rupees. Even that was incorporated. And every expenditure income, that was at the basic level. Then at the higher level, the income. And then it would go to the Politburo and to their leadership. And for what? To buy RDX, dynamite, weapons. And Naxals were frugal in lifestyle only for public consumption. On their own, they would be absolutely eyeball deep in the five-star culture, living a very flashy lifestyle.
Don't you think that is the similar for many politicians who show themselves to be very frugal, but it is very expensive to maintain them, and also this has been going on for a very long time. So, sir, I want to ask, what is this thing with frugality, and why are politicians so pretentious? In the sense, pretentious to pretend that they are frugal. What is the idea behind this? Why do they do this? And how is it happening in today's time?
Frugality is a virtue. One is supposed to be frugal, and of course one has to be frugal in thought, word and deed. But when it becomes an act, when it becomes just a cover-up for the ostentatious and a flashy lifestyle that a person must be leading, then the problem arises.
And so the communists were ace at it. Many parties, I think that this is a policy that is practiced by many parties, but specifically when we are discussing communist parties, the Maoist Communist Center, MCC, CPI, ML, these are the ones you're saying that who would practice it, they would look frugal and cheap in front of their cadre.
They would look frugal, cheap, and absolutely much below the BPL level also. And that was an act and a facade and a very designed and a calibrated act, so that the media and the people know that he's one of us and he is indeed somebody who's so impoverished, without makeup, torn clothes, the most shoddy, perhaps they would get it second hand, or even if they get it first hand, maybe from the Khadi Bhandar also, but they reduce it to tatters and then wear it. Give the impression that it is soiled, it is not been cleaned or given to the cleaners for days and weeks together. So that is all for public consumption.
Yeah. Do you think that they do this because it is their personal consumption, that they are, in a way narcissistic or split personalities? Or do you think that they do this because they are getting international funding from somewhere to do these things?
It is by design. There's no problem with their brain. They're not, of course, they're narcissistic.
Yeah.
Of course, they are nargispana. Of course, they have a psychological problem, but they have an insidious, a very calculating mind, and they know what will work for them. And what will work for them, Nina ji, is to be frugal in front of the people, get as much public support, adulation as is possible, and as also foreign funding. But wearing designer clothes and wearing designer shoes, moving in Rolls Royces and Mercedes will not take them very far. In fact, moving in tempos, moving in public transport, as you would know, a word to the wise is enough. That will give the impression that here is my Neta, he's one of us, he's moving there, wearing a muffler, moving in chappals. And therefore, he is our man, he's a common man. The fact of the matter is that how really common is, there's nothing common about this common man, brand ambassador.
I want to know, in earlier times, what is the difference in how we find the Naxals? In earlier times, how were the Naxals identified? And in today's time, how do we identify them? And what has changed in those times? Because I think that a lot of them have morphed themselves. We don't recognize them. And we have enough of dishonest intellectuals to call them Gandhians with guns. I mean, to justify their work. Some of them don't carry guns anymore, but they are of the same extremist left-wing ideology. Can you help us identify these people? One, what was the transition? What has been the evolution? How has Naxalism changed from that time to today's time? I think I've asked too many questions.
Not at all, but this would be in totality that Naxal movement, like the country's society, has evolved over a period of time.
Okay.
What used to be with pickaxes, lathis, ballams, swords, and pickaxes has now evolved into maybe shotguns, maybe evolved into small SPBL, that is single barrel breech loading guns, DBBLs, and basic rifles. But that was when I joined service in the year 1976 in Mirzapur.
Okay.
Thereafter, they evolved when they started attacking the police armories, the paramilitary. They, in fact, armed themselves with automatic weapons, the like of which was, say, the SLRs, the self-loading rifles, the light machine guns. And at a given point of time, their arsenals were superior to that of the police and the paramilitary.
And they were getting this money from the same
Not
extortion.
money. They were looting the armories, and the money and the funding happened to be very, very channelized and systematic through extortions, through forcible kidnappings and executions, contract killings, booth capturings. Naxals also had a great role to play in the election process also.
Okay.
They would not only capture booths, but they'd also plant candidates or support a candidate. Therefore, it came at a cost. And this cost was managed by whom? You know, it was managed through these extortions, protection money, and from the corporates also.
From the corporates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every corporate paid the money. Howsoever high and mighty and holier than thou, that the butter wouldn't melt in your mouth, whatever be the saying that they. The fact of the matter is that if you were doing business there, you were paying the Naxals also. Now the weaponry. You see the weaponry. I've seen them attacking police stations. You see they had the audacity to blow up the vehicle of a former chief minister when he was going for Tirupati Darshan. They could blow up the armories of the CISF using what? The dynamite. And this was very bad. Therefore, the paramilitary, the police had to take extra routes, different directions, go on what is known as the Pagdandi or the beaten path, not so much as the beaten path, but where you would find the forest area so that nobody would plant Balti bomb or any explosives in an unknown area. So it was advisable and a smart move on part of the police and the paramilitary to move on less frequented paths. But to your question, the armory, their training, they have the training manuals also. They are very highly trained. Their guerrillas are not only trained in fieldcraft and tactics, night firing, aiming, and infrared aiming devices. They had weapons that had infrared aiming devices, laser devices, and they also had bulletproof jackets. Where did they get them from? By looting the armories and looting the police armories and magazines.
And how did they end up with more sophisticated weapons than the police themselves?
Looting from the army,
Okay.
looting from the paramilitary forces, looting from the police forces, getting them from across the border.
Okay. And I want to understand how have they morphed today? Because I know that many of them have come to civil life. And let's say, for example, there is this whole concept of urban Naxals in universities now. Can you please explain that to us as well? And how does a common person, how does a common teenager or a common person, the youth that is watching this show, you are very experienced in this. Maybe you have read about it, you have first-hand experience. How do we explain it to the common children, the common youth, to understand just by listening to us?
Please understand very carefully, the wages of sin is death. How so much you may glamorize Naxalism, trying to serve the poor, doing Lal Salam, carrying Mao Zedong's Vichar Dhara in your pocket, the red book in your pocket, it doesn't take you very far. Afzal hum sharminda hai, tumhare qatil zinda hai will not take you very far. At the end of the day, somebody asked me the same question. Had you been the police commissioner of Delhi, what would you have done had these things happened in the JNU campus? Okay, the entire might of the administration would have come down on them like a ton of bricks. And make no mistake about it, I'm still repeating what I said then on national television, you'll forget General Dyer.
I want to understand, you said about this thing about poor and the radicalization, that they always want to say sympathy to the poor, sympathy to the downtrodden. Because in earlier times, if I look at the data and the news clippings, and especially the West portrayed this as if it was a Dalit movement and it was a movement of the underprivileged. What would you say on that?
I'm happy that you have been able to identify this clinically and surgically. This is one nonsense that the Western and the pervert media has tried to feed us, and their takiya kalam, oft repeated cliche, as they say in English, is the Dalit and Muslim. The Dalit and Muslim.
And the tribals. They included the tribals.
Dalit and the Muslim, they would be part of that because they choose their words very carefully, not so that it makes phonetic sense also, but it is intelligible.
Okay.
Dalit Muslim, Dalit Muslim, Dalit Muslim. Whenever I would go on TV, Dalit Muslim. What, of course, every person has a right to exist with honor, and that would include our Dalit and Muslim brothers too.
Yes.
But your misplaced compassion for the criminals belonging to a particular community is also very surprising.
But sir, I want to add to what is being portrayed. They are trying to portray this as if it's only a Dalit and a Muslim movement, when it is not true.
It is not true.
I know that many Brahmins from Bengal, many Brahmins from UP, many Brahmins from Bihar as well were a part of this. Why only Brahmin? All castes were involved. The Brahmins were the leaders as well. There was Mr. Basu, there was Mukherjee's, there were so many of them.
You mentioned Mr. Mukherjee at the pain of being interrupting you. He wrote the pearls of wisdom. You should not be sentimental over shedding a few liters of innocent human blood. Anything could be more nonsensical, cold-blooded than this. Sentimental over shedding a few liters of innocent human blood. And suppose it's a drop of your blood, how would you react, Mr. Mukherjee? The very fact that the blood is not yours, it happens to be somebody else who is innocent. I hold them to be responsible for high treason and anti-national activities, and harbored, monitored. Who was Father Stan? Everybody, the entire nation cried hoarse, the poor Father Stan. He is an elderly man in jail, subjected to inhuman. And a whole lot of Lutyens lobby went after him that the state is not being compassionate. Let me assure you, the state was unusually compassionate. It's a different matter than the elderly man, perhaps addicted to a lifestyle, perhaps addicted to a certain because he's deceased, I would stop at that. But the fact of the matter is, the state was in no way bloodthirsty. To the contrary, Father Stanley and his supporters, his cohorts should understand what has he been accused of. Accused of what? I'm sure you must be aware of the criminal conspiracy of assassinating the leader of the elected government of the country.
Yes.
And you think the nation should take it lightly? Had this happened in anywhere else in the world, you should have known the consequences thereof.
Not only that, when the elected representative of the country was murdered, I believe that there was a 10-year-old child who was calling and was made, and they showed pictures of children and women celebrating. There were children who were radicalized, there were children who were phone operators, there were children who were carrying the weapons. How do you explain that? I mean, on one point, the Western media harps and says, look, these are the people, we have to save our children. Yet at the other side, these people operate with children. Whether you take a look at India with the Naxals, they have children as operatives. Whether you take a look at Gaza, wherein they have children as shields under nurseries, under schools, under kindergartens, and under hospitals. They have their armory, they store, they have tunnels. How do you explain this hypocrisy?
It is not hypocrisy. It is a design. It is a combat requirement, and they are using children and women as a combat tool,
Okay.
and protection against themselves, using them as a shield. And there are juvenile laws all across the world, in all the civilized world, that the juvenile will be prosecuted, charged differently than adults. And therefore, I would say that in India also, as also in Gaza or elsewhere, they use children as pawns, cat's paw, and also as a shield to cover up their own nefarious designs. But coming back to India, there is an ecosystem where you are sitting just now. There's an ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem. It is considered very fashionable to talk about the downtrodden, the poor, the Dalit, and the Muslim. It's good to talk about them. Anyone who's impoverished, who's uneducated, requires the support of the state. But I would have second thoughts if I use them as a shield and use them as a token and to glamorize my criminal activities and then take the defense of the Dalits and the Muslims. Of course, nobody would grudge any compassion towards them. But I would certainly have my very strong opinion that if you use them as a tool, as an instrument to protect your nefarious activities. And the world over, it's not just that in India that it is happening. 1,400 schoolgirls were ravished and, of course, subjected to innumerable atrocities in England. And the police, the British police, known the world over for its competence, did not have it in them because they would be branded as Islamophobics. So what is more important? Rule of law is important, or being branded as Islamophobics is important?
Oh, they were going to be branded as racist. Their fathers were told not to pursue the cases in case they were going to be called racist and put in jail for racism. So the way I observed this behavior was that they were more concerned with how are we appearing than they were concerned with the lives of the innocent girls. And 1,400, mind you, are the recorded cases. These must be the nice policemen who have recorded the cases. The numbers actually go in a few hundred thousands. And this
Obviously.
has been documented online, documented in newspapers. And one of the things that I want to bring your attention to is that they never said that the girls were ravished. They said that the girls were having sex with these men, and then they said South Asian men, these many number of girls. And there were people who came and crossed from, instead of sex they said raped, and South Asian men they said Pakistanis, because there were 98 to 99% of
We're
the
Pakistani.
if 98 to 99% of the perpetrators are Pakistani, how dare you call them South Asians? South Asians includes India, South Asian includes Bangladesh, it includes Burma, it includes Sri Lanka, it includes every other country that is a part of Asia. I mean, the whole expanse almost till let's say till Indonesia is, in that regard, there are about 1.8 or more than that, a few billion people. I mean, we have a few billion in our own country. How can you whitewash crimes like this? And then that brings me to the question, how and what was till how deep was media complicit in this? Because I have noticed time and again, whether it is these dishonest individuals, intellectuals, so-called eminent intellectuals in India, who call these Maoist Gandhians with guns, extremist Gandhians with guns, and then we have the media whitewashing the rapes of children by saying that they were in relationships with them. A 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old is not going to get into a relationship with a 50-year-old. Obviously, the child is being groomed. Why do you think, number one, the media was complicit in it, both abroad and with the issues in India, let's say the Maoist issues? How did media perpetuate this further?
The media, the social media, the fake news, and the deep fake news. It is a heady cocktail of all these things built into one, And of course, the bribe money. Right across the world, whether it's India, it's UK, it's USA, the fetish for promoting the Hamas,
Yes.
the Hamas, Gazan lives matter,
Yes.
and Israelis' lives don't matter.
Yes.
You brutalize the Israeli women, throw their babies into pools of petroleum and set them on fire. They don't matter.
One of the few of the babies, they put them in the microwave.
Those lives don't matter. Therefore, the hypocrisy and, of course, the perversion of the media. And we'll discuss, of course, the fact that this ecosystem pervades international boundaries too. What we are discussing is what's happening in India. There are so many Hamas supporters. We recently had an agitation at Jantar Mantar supporting Hamas. What have you got to do with Hamas? Let me understand. And then what happened in New York and in the Ivy League campuses in the US? Why leave the US out? There, before the Donald Trump's election, they tore off the pictures of those who were missing and those who were dead. And for what on earth? That their lives do not matter. Obviously, only the lives of the Ghazans and the Hamas people matter. This, of course, is intellectual dishonesty of the worst kind, that you choose to speak only for the death of Hamas and their leaders and their cohorts. The fact of the matter is that he invited trouble, and because everyone, I said also that Israelis have a right to live, and like everybody on the planet, Israelis also have a right to live. And anybody who destroys any country, but they are occupants, that of course is a different matter. You choose to create a problem and then try to obliterate them. Of course, Israel has a right to live and defend itself, and what they have done, I think every civilized person and every person needs to take a call on his conscience and see that if Israel does not have a right to live, then actually Israel is fighting the battle of so many countries, including ours. We have Hamas supporters in Kashmir. They said, if Hum Hamas, wearing labels, Hum Hamas. What do you mean by Hum Hamas? In Kerala, you call the deputy leader over a video conference and have a conference of the deputy leader of Hamas addressing youth in Kerala. What is common between Hamas and Kerala? What is common between Hamas and Kashmir? Only one thing is common. Radical Islam, violence, anti-Hindu sentiment, anti-Israel sentiment. Therefore, any person who feels that qatl wajib, what is qatl wajib? Qatl is qatl, and is punishable under for death penalty or life imprisonment. There's nothing like qatl wajib. It's only the state who can take the life of any person after due process of law. Nobody can claim self-professed strength to deny somebody's right of life. Therefore, I would say there are two things. Urban Naxals. You find it's become fashionable. Discussing in 5 stars, paying astronomical amounts for your bills, wearing coming in flashy cars, but discussing the condition of the downtrodden and the poor and pathetic conditions of people living in slums. You do nothing absolutely and then talk in double standards. Your double standards speak for themselves. Therefore, every person, I would not like to name them, but one lady advocate of the Supreme Court, one ex-IAS officer, okay, I will not take names just to honor them on your wonderful platform, and one or two others, and one male Supreme Court judge who was thrashed in his chamber. These are the people who are the advocates of the so-called left-wing extremist terrorists. अफजल हम शर्मिंदा हैं. अरे शर्मिंदा तो आपको होना चाहिए कि आप ऐसे लोगों को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. You should be ashamed of yourself that you are standing for the cause of those who are brazenly and charged, not only charged, convicted of anti-national activities. It's a good thing that the present government has come down like a ton of bricks on those who speak against India, Bharat and Sanatan. Everybody has a right to live. But today it has become fashionable. The more you hate Sanatan, the more you hate Hindus, the more secular you are deemed to be.
Yes. From whatever you have just said to me, 2 questions come to my mind. The first question is, one, how is this rampant radicalization going in the universities? Whether we see left-wing extremism, urban Naxalism, or we see Islamic radicalism. And the second question is, what is the difference that you have seen in today's handling of such situations? Today, and how did the previous era of India handle it, and what what is what are the good and the bad points of that? So two questions. You can go with whichever.
Radicalization in any form is obnoxious, cancerous, and of course something like slow poison.
Okay.
I would repeat, it is cancerous and like slow poison, it has to be decimated with all the authority.
Sure.
But strength and of course excessive strength can be counterproductive.
Okay.
Left-wing extremism is almost breathing its last. The fashionable get-togethers at coffee houses and going endlessly in meaningless debates for hours together over half a cup of coffee, I think those days are over.
Okay.
The glamour quotient of Naxalism is now over. And as our Honorable Home Minister has said, that Naxal movement will come to an end by early next year.
March 31st,
March
2026.
2026, it will be over. It's almost over.
Yes.
I think the mopping up operations will end 31st March 2026. What they were holding 40% of India's landmass in 2008, indeed, the nation has done exceptionally well. Therefore, I would now focus that any criminal activity, any anti-national activity should not go unnoticed and that should be taken to task. As we have been trained as police officers, आपने अगर मौका दिया सेवा का तो वक्त से पहले उम्मीद से ज़्यादा ऐसी सेवा हो जाएगी कि आप 7 पुरुष याद करेंगे.
That's a very sweet thing to say because this is the kind of service that we require in public today.
नहीं होनी चाहिए. अभी तो मेरी आधी सेवा की मैंने बात की है. अभी रेडिकलाइजेशन पे हम आ जाएं. Getting money, trying to beguile the youth, getting conversions done, that is a cause of concern. The moment a few states had anti-conversion laws, there was a lobby. Oh, we are free to practice any religion. You are, of course, free to practice any religion if you practice it of your own free will. If it is out of duress, if it out of deceit, if it out of bribe money, if it out of compulsion arising out of pecuniary gifts, etc., then it is a crime. And so be it. The nation requires that. The horrible state of conversions and women being exported to the Middle East for human trafficking, that the nation will not accept. Now that the problem has been identified, I again would say that these dating apps, these social media platforms, a few of them, and a few matrimonial sites are often the sites for radicalization. People posing as belonging to one community, whereas they belong to a different community. They get married, and after that, when the truth comes out of shame and out of perhaps lajja, they do not disclose, they go in for conversions. These things will have to be not nipped in the bud, but crushed in the bud. Now, at least you and I are discussing the problem. We and I have identified many states have enacted laws that prevent and make it a punishable offense. I would say that naming and shaming of such people should also be enforced. And more importantly, the conversion laws are religion neutral. They don't say that a religion is converting.
सिर्फ लड़कियां नहीं पढ़ रही हैं इस ट्रैप में. आई वुड से 95% to 98% लड़कियां पढ़ रही हैं इस ट्रैप में, परंतु कुछ एक छोटा लड़कों का भी नंबर है. मैं अभी कल ही इनफैक्ट देख रही थी कि एक जेंटलमैन थे, उनके पास 18 बीघा ज़मीन थी. वो एक किसी शो पे आए जहाँ पे उन्होंने बोला कि उनकी उम्र 45 हो चुकी है और उनके पास इतना ज़मीन है, वो उनकी नौकरी भी है, पर उनका विवाह नहीं हो रहा है. फट से उनको किसी का आता है कि हमने आपको इस शो पे देखा, हम आपसे शादी करना चाहेंगे. और लेडी ने नहीं कहा था, लेडी के भाई ने कहा था. तो उन्होंने लेडी की फ़ोटो दिखाई, बोली कि हम उनके भाई हैं. पूछा कि घर बाहर कौन है. इनके भी गुजर चुके थे 45 में. इन्होंने बोला हम अनाथ हैं, हम ऐसे हैं. ऑब्वियसली जो स्त्री थी वो यंग थी. तो शादी की और शादी के रात को ही उनको कुछ ऐसा खिला करके गलत उनका मर्डर कर दिया गया. और उससे पहले उनसे साइन वाइन करवा लिया था, वसीयत तो करवा लिया था. बाद में ये पता चला कि वो लेडी के बॉयफ्रेंड थे जिन्होंने ये काम करवाया था. ऑब्वियसली जो नाम जो ये सब बताया था ये सब गलत है, कुछ भी नहीं था. एंड इट वाज लाइक फॉर मनी. सो दिस brother-sister duo got in touch with him. Unfortunately, they were not a brother-sister duo. They were a couple who then murdered this gentleman right after marriage and wanted to claim property immediately after that, and because of which they were caught. So I would say कि ये आदमी ही नहीं, मतलब औरतें ही नहीं, लड़के भी radicalize होते हैं. Sir, can you please explain to us how this social media and how this radicalization is happening, especially at young ages? I mean, in colleges and universities, what has happened? And you had mentioned that these dating apps and these
matrimonial.
Can you please explain it? We have any few stories if you can tell them?
I have innumerable stories that people trying to claim to be that very well-to-do and wealthy cases.
Okay.
Youth case of Ajmer also. They are typical. Boys who are actually absolutely of no consequence would be of, I would say, not earning more than 20,000 rupees a month. And it's not the case of just one boy, but 3 or 4 boys trying to befriend girls from very good families. And they not only befriended them, they almost ensnared them. And like as did the grooming gangs did in UK, these boys also were successful in ensnaring, enticing, and taking their objectionable videos also. They not only blackmailed them. Now the object was love jihad. Love jihad being taken to their ultimate culmination point and then exploiting the girls. Not only physically, mentally, but also. It can end in marriage. Now see, most of the families today have around 2 children or at best 3 children. So one thing is guaranteed. Love jihad, you prove a point and make your point and you feel that you have done a religious duty.
Yes.
Secondly, you inherit at least half the property.
Correct.
If it is just marriage.
Yeah.
But the matter doesn't stop there.
Yes.
You take the girl and subject her to human trafficking in the Middle East.
Yes.
Most of the love jihads, they do happen that the woman is exploited to no end. I've also known cases where the girl not only is subjected to inheritance, first the inheritance is taken, and maybe after a couple of years when the inheritance has happened, the girl is taken to Middle East and subjected to all kinds of mental and human torture. You'll understand that.
Yes.
And it is not just the question of one, and we were blind, we did not acknowledge that something like love jihad existed. But if the Kerala files is to be believed, if what has happened all around the country, I can tell you from experience that love jihad is a cruel reality, and people and the parents need to be very, very careful about what the children are up to. If boys who have no ostentatious or no ostensible means of living, they are able to ensnare girls, give them iPhones, designer clothes, then obviously somebody is funding them and their depredations. And who's funding the depredations? Money from the Middle East, money from vested interest. And as it happened in Ajmer, one person ensnares, then the whole flock of wolves pounces upon the girl, and then whatever happens is one long nightmare for the girl and the family.
Sir, let's say if there are young girls watching this show, what would be the telltale signs of such men? And same goes for men as well. If there were girls who were doing this, wanting to ensnare them, then what would be the telltale
Good
signs?
question. I'm happy that you've asked this question. About the boys, I know very well. When you see dandies, and as the dandies are of two kinds, the prigs and the smugs, unnaturally dressed up. When I say unnaturally dressed up, they will be in a demeanor that goes that you dress up like a film star, but have the looks of a shoe shine. Nothing wrong in being a shoe shine. This कहते हैं छछुंदर के सर पे चमेली का तेल. Okay, you find a person that is totally obnoxious but wearing flashy because it is by design. He has been financed to buy fancy clothes. He has been designed to buy fancy perfume. The fact of the matter is that he is eating rotten. I wouldn't say, I'll stop at that. The chapati and rotten stuff. But for a show, for public face, he would dress up like a dandy, a prig like a film star. And once he has been able to engage you and your attention by sharing your numbers, giving you love letters, giving you expensive gifts, then at the given point of time, in their own language, because I've had the good fortune of interrogating hundreds of them.
Hundreds of love jihad perpetrators.
मरीज़े इश्क जिसको आशिक कहते हैं.
अच्छा.
I have a strong dislike and allergy to them.
Okay.
So other criminals may be interrogated by the SOs and the junior officers, but these will be interrogated by me personally.
Okay.
And अंकिल जी पत्थर पे भी पानी कुछ देर तो असर नहीं, उसके बाद तो पत्थर भी टूट जाता है. तो थोड़ा सब्र से काम लें तो मकसद पूरा हो जाता है. ऐसा होता नहीं कि मकसद पूरा नहीं होता है. कि यही बात तो मेरे ऊपर भी लागू होती है. तुमने अपना मकसद पूरा किया, अब मैं अपने अरमान पूरे करूँगा.
So how would you want? So you said dandy, they will wear dandy clothes. They are not, मतलब चमेली, मतलब चुचुंदर पे चमेली का तेल. These are the things. Let's say it's the men. How would the men be wary of this as well? How would we warn the boys?
This is a personal decision, but the age of 45, if you're still a bachelor, then please identify, question, trust your sisters, trust your family, well-wishers. If you want to go in for marriage, then take trusted channels, not matrimonial sites. Matrimonial sites, if they're not reliable, then often I have found, and if the accident rate and the flop rates are more than 10%, it is indeed a cause of concern. People change their names, people change their identities, people buy, rent up a flashy accommodation that this is my Haveli, only if it is for just 2 months, and then take a car on lease, maybe even if it has to be a BMW or a Mercedes for pomp and show, get married, and then at the end of the day, you realize that he is an absolutely good for nothing. He invested 5 lakhs for a project marriage, and then lead you up the garden path. कहते सब्ज बाग दिखा के सब्जी खिला दिया.
क्या दिखा के?
सब्ज बाग दिखा के सब्जी खिला दिया.
Okay, so these are good. And do you think that there are other kinds of exploitations happening through these?
Oh, yes.
So can you tell us?
Be wary of any social media interaction,
Okay.
face-to-face interaction, without personal knowledge. Look here, I'm a very senior citizen.
Okay.
Somebody says, sir, मैं आपके यहाँ आना चाहता हूँ. आना चाहता हूँ. Unless I know a person for 10 years, I don't meet that person socially.
Okay.
Unless I know a person for 10 years, I don't meet that person
Socially, or you mean to say you don't invite them home? And what if somebody wants to meet you in public?
What reason do I have of meeting a person? I don't play cards, I don't drink, and I don't smoke. There has to be a logical reason. I only study, I do exercise, and if anybody wants to exercise, then come and meet me in the university gym. We can work out together. If you want to study, come in my library. We can meet here. But obviously, if you say, sir, can I come and we have over a cup of coffee? I don't drink coffee with strangers. I drink coffee with my family, with my close friends, people who I've known for 10 years. And unless the family bona fides or the bona fides of that persons are impeccable, beyond any doubt, only then meet that person in a public place. If after 2 or 3 interactions you find, I know what I'm saying is he would be very impractical for people who are love smitten. But I don't play up to the gallery for people who are love smitten. And if you are bachelor till the age of 45, then obviously you did not play your cards well. You should have played your cards well. इधर जाऊं या उधर जाऊं, बड़ी मुश्किल में हूं, किधर जाऊं, और अभी भी आप किधर जाऊं, and then you landed yourself in absolute trouble. Now we come to the fact that women should, and men both, I would say when I say both, be very careful. I was at a show on a very prestigious national channel, and there were ladies also. I was the only man. The anchor was also a lady, an anchor of great repute. And suppose, Miss, I'm called by a prospective groom to meet. What should I do? So the lady, psychologist like you, advised, go at a public place. Have somebody known to you sitting in the car waiting for you. Carry a pepper spray or a small arm. And also put fast dialing mode of your mobile to the nearest police station. When my turn, Miss, is it worth it? Changing the context, I would say that are you going for an ambush or a combat? Are you going for a dating interaction?
Me too.
The manner in which you are arming yourself, I think it is very counterproductive. And those that play with the sword shall perish with the sword.
Correct.
First, know the person. And there are various ways of knowing a person, by his qualifications, by his dialogue. You just don't dive into a relationship. Speak to him on phone, have a Zoom call. If you feel that your comfort level okay, then go to a public place and see. Then there be another interaction. Meet the family and see that my family is not here. Everybody is in the happier world, or everybody is staying in the States. I'm the only person. Na aage hai, naak na piche paga. Beware of such people who have nobody around. And if even there are people around, please see the telltale sign that they're authentic mothers and fathers, or they have been hired to be the parents for a fortnight till he's able to exploit you, or she is able to exploit you.
In fact, sir, on that point, I want to remind anybody who's watching is that in the Hindu pratha, you need parents. And if the parents are not there, at least, even for the boys, you need the parents. At least an elder brother has to be there, or somebody like the elder brother. Otherwise, who is going to correct the groom after they are married and they are not following the path? In fact, in India, in a marriage situation, if the families are, if one side of the family is not there, it is almost impossible for that person to now get married, because it's like, ye परिवार ही श्रापित है. There is this other thing. So if somebody makes these statements, if somebody claims Hindus being slightly more conservative on these angles is one reason, and so therefore nobody can claim these things. These things
These things are always planted
signs.
and
Yeah.
related. The first modus operandi was कि my parents are staying in the States, they are NRIs and the US citizens. I'm the only person working here in a multinational. This is a standard ruse.
Okay.
When this almost became obsolete, then there was a fresher version of this conspiracy
Okay.
or this trick. They said that these are my parents. They'll hire one man or woman to be their parents.
Okay.
And yes, he's my son, and I've been working, and I'm a retired government servant, and she was a teacher or she was a nurse.
Yeah.
And then after the hiring, once the marriage said, I have to go to USA for an assignment. Let us get married in a temple or in Arya Samaj manner or wherever, whatever manner. And then since the basic tickets would be required, your ticket and my ticket, and I would get my funds, let us pay for both the tickets. Pay for the tickets, pay for the passage, pay for everything, and just disappear into thin air. Don't be so stupid as to do a thing. Don't be smitten by this kind of a bazaru love affair.
And so I want to understand also the difference in this radicalization. Now we are only talking of victims. If I go through the kind of radicalizations that has happened in campuses, especially through online, because majority of these radicalizations have happened online. If I take a look at the case of Shamaima Begum from the UK, and there is another lady called Jennifer W. From Germany. Now, Shamaima Begum left UK to join the ISIS. She became an ISIS bride. And she didn't go there just to be an ISIS bride. She went there and became a slave trader. She became a trader of other girls. She was trading girls. After having changed 3 or 4 husbands, a few kids, she got bored of that lifestyle, and at the age of 21 she wanted to come back to the UK, wherein the UK said no. The other cases of this lady called Jennifer, she was again a Muslim woman from Germany, and she was so cruel that she became an ISIS bride again, went abroad, and she had Yazdi slaves. 2 slaves she kept at home. One was a lady and her 5-year-old daughter. She was so inhuman that she killed the daughter by hanging her from a string around her neck, and the child was hungry and wanting to have food, so she was torturing the mother to do things, and she then hung this child from the window, and the mother had to watch this child die. This is how cruel she was. When she went into Germany, there's video, and my story may not be the exact as it is written in the media, because because this is what I remembered from it. When she went in Germany, there was a whole scene of her in court wherein the lawyer is giving her a file to hide her face so that the media does not see her face, and she was being questioned and she was being convicted for her crimes. So these are women who are not victims. These are women who want victims. They side with the men. So we've spoken of victims, and we've made men the perpetrators of it. But here we have ISIS brides who are willingly doing this and exploiting other girls. Can you tell us the mentality of the perpetrators, especially these women? Because till now we're like, oh, Kerala girls, so innocent. But there were some girls who trapped them as well, right? And then the mentality of these men versus the mentality of the victims. Can you give us an insight into that?
Neena ji, you have put a very pertinent question, and I've since worked on this for some time. I will tell you, and I've also referred to the book of Jessica Stern, Professor Jessica Stern of Harvard University, a known authority on IS and its depredations. And the title is ISIS also. Now, she also has mentioned the 2 stories that you have mentioned, innumerable stories in this very book on the same lines. There is an actual racket in which women are willing accessories to these crimes. How to ensnare. Where men fail, women step in. Like there's an office. In England, I'll give you the real life. Maybe perhaps it's your story, I don't remember the names. There's a woman who has been recently widowed, lost a child, and there's a comforting woman belonging to, of course, with the ISIS philosophy. How to change the wiring of the mind. How to program your mind into a jihadi philosophy. That is the sole game plan. And once the mind has been programmed, has been wired as per the directives of the ISIS, and it becomes a jihadi, then you are a ticking time bomb. You will play not only as per the instructions, you are a robot. Then suddenly say that you are recently widowed, we'll get you engaged. Because I remember this person's story, that there's a young doctor in Bangladesh who would like to marry you and support you. Now, the first thing happens that this woman probably thought a lot of solace, got a lot of comfort from this friend, little realizing that she was stabbing every time that she interacted with her. She was being backstabbed and cheated. She got in touch with this Bangladeshi doctor. The Bangladeshi doctor was reported to be 29 years of age. And he said that you get me the tickets and get me the citizenship and get me something. So he got his papers ready, the tickets ready. They got an online nikah. And lo and behold, when the bridegroom came, जब दूल्हे मियाँ तशरीफ लाए, तो उनकी उम्र थी 55 साल. एक पैर कब्र में, एक पैर कब्र में, और मानो मुंह में दांत नहीं, पेट में आत नहीं. That girl was befooled. That lady was befooled. And this is the kind of, it is not only just one case, it is the case of every person who does this online nikah, this business of changing the faith and then ending in matrimony and making a mess of her life. A total mess and a chaos.
So why did she go ahead with the nikah if this was not the person who was
She went
promised?
back on. She did not know that this man was 55 or 60 years old. She thought that he's 28 years old. The photo morph came up and said that it is inauspicious for me to show my real face until we get the nikah done. So it was all a ruse, and she became so trusting that she started eating out of the hands of the handler.
Okay, so I want to understand who are these handlers and what is their mentality. And you know, this Shamaima Begum case that I'm telling you, she was radicalized when she was a teenager, 15 years old, and she didn't go alone. She went with two more of her classmates. So the whole class was radicalized. For three girls to go out of a class, that means the whole class was radicalized to a very large extent. That encouraged the three girls to just quit the UK and
You
leave.
see, it has a very structured program. The fact of the matter is, it is a very crude and a mercenary ambition to get, especially those women who have pots of money, or perhaps it will be a trophy. What they're getting is not only a wife who's much younger, but a trophy wife. And a trophy wife who can give you, finance you, treat you, give you your green card, and perhaps a citizenship of US and the UK. The game plan is this. And every person who enters a European country like this is a ticking time bomb, a heap of RDX, as it is shown in many of the incidents.
And so, in my previous question, I had asked you what are the differences that you've seen, and especially in the handling of urban Naxals. We've gone into Islamic radicalization. Let's get back to urban Naxalism. I want to understand what is the difference that you've seen in the handling of the Naxal issue between the today as versus the past in India. How did India handle that?
When I handled Naxals in the late 70s, 80s, it was in the jungles, it was with gunfire, it was in the poverty-stricken areas, and always we had to travel on foot because they were not accessible even to two-wheelers. Either you cycle your way or you walk it, rough it out. Today, the urban Naxals, you have to see them, you'll have to go to one of the conference centers. I don't name them because the conference centers of Lutyens, Delhi, or to the five-star lobbies, the coffee shops, the dining areas, the most classy dining areas, where a meal for a single person in a very frugal manner, without dessert and without drinks and the pudding, would cost you not less than 15,000 rupees. That is the place that is frequented. Who talk of hardware and software and next generation computer systems, the laptops and the mobile phones, the satellite phones, and of course the latest fashion, and also about the pathetic condition of the poor in this country and how atrocious the government is, how cruel and insensitive the present government is, little realizing that the Dalali's days are over. The time for easy money is over. And that is why they are spewing venom against the country and the women, because for the last 10 years, they are almost reduced to the level of abject poverty. Unki dalali ke dhande ho gaye hai band. They are under surveillance, and their top leaders, the Supreme Court lawyer bashed up in his office, the IS officer who either has been dismissed or probably has taken a VRS, and another lady Supreme Court lawyer, and also one or two others. The frequent, you can't miss it, there are not too many of them. but the faces, and they put the best foot forward. These best faces are in fact the brand ambassadors. And how pathetic, how pointed. But I can guarantee today on your way back, go to one of the coffee shops of the 5 stars. You'll find one or two loitering around like Pathbrasht, Chamgadar. You'll find them loitering around flying there.
So, you mentioned this very interesting point that all these Naxals, while they dine and have the high life, they pretend to worry about the poor. And they always, repeatedly, any kind of radicalization, whether it was Islamic radicalization or it was urban Naxal radicalization, they always blame poverty for it. Why is poverty always blamed for it?
Poverty is something that the social welfare department is already working on it. Poverty cannot be eradicated in a day. But look where we were and where we are. From $5,000 per capita income, we have $7,500 today. Look what we are not manufacturing because of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And look at the opportunities today which were non-existent 50 years ago. Look at the progress. You have poverty in America, but that doesn't entitle a person to become a Naxal and say, loot the bank and say, Mao Zedong Zindabad. And if you say that, well, there are bloodthirsty officers who will make you run for your money's worth.
In fact, I was watching the podcast of some Marines, and the Marines said that when he joined the Marines, when you join the army, their boss, their instructor said, here is the Communist Manifesto. I want all of you to read it well so that you know who your enemy is. You should not miss your enemy. What a great way to teach students. I mean, and I feel that something like this is very much lacking in this country. Do you think that this kind of education should go? At least we should know who our enemies are.
Of course we should know. Revolution begins from the barrel of the gun. Mao Zedong.
Yes.
Suppose you are on the wrong side of the barrel of the gun, then Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao, then what? It's not necessary that I will be always on the wrong side of the gun. It depends upon who's on the wrong side of the gun. Second, the state is an instrument of exploitation of the proletariat by the bourgeois. And therefore, police are its agents.
Okay.
Hence, in any agitation, the agitators are always right and the police are always wrong. With this presumption, if you're starting demonstration, well, police will be on your radar always. The police stations will be on your radar. You'll take pains to attack any police station, any police vehicle that comes your way. And last but not the least, do not be over sentimental in shedding a few liters of innocent human blood. And then, as they said in Mirzapur, I'll go back, what Mirzapur was in my time was, 6 inch chota kar denge. Naxals go to a village and they say, there will be kangaroo courts, dispose of, acha tumne sahukar ne sood liya, you've taken excessive exorbitant interest, isko 6 inch chota kar do. Or you are a policeman, isko 6, what is the meaning of 6 inch chota kar do? To chop off his neck through a ganasa and write a threatening note with the blood of the deceased and stick it on 10 or 12 public places so that the impact of fear is driven right into the village and to the law enforcement machinery.
This is the same operation that I remember that Osama bin Laden undertook when he rammed into when the planes rammed into the Twin Towers. This is what he said, to drive fear into infidels or something like that. And irony of the situation is, till then, Osama bin Laden was a billionaire. Till then, the media and the so-called intellectuals were always talking of poverty, that poverty makes this, poverty makes this. But unfortunately, in any of these cases, we don't see poverty making any...
You have IIT graduates attacking the Maharaji's Mutt in Gorakhpur. You have IIM's pass-outs doing all kinds of objectionable activities. Poverty may be a contributory cause. I do not deny it. But the problem arises when people who have arrived, people who have an excellent job opportunities, doing wonderfully well, from whom the state has invested crores of rupees, that you decide to attack the state and to attack elected leaders of the assembly and the parliament. That is where the problem arises.
So where are the parents of these children, and where are we going?
No. These children actually have been misguided, and they were on sedatives, and also they are mentally challenged now.
Okay.
So this lunacy can be cured either by medication if it is authentic, or by police treatment also.
Belt treatment. A few belt treatment. I think those who didn't get enough belt treatment were also probably...
You see, police is a very compassionate department. It believes in total philosophy of non-violence. But if police is attacked, the law gives us the authority to protect ourselves and those who are attacked or in a danger. And there's a phrase in the police investigation that has stood the test of time for 156 years. हंगामाए गिरफ्तारी में मुनासिब चोट पहुंचा के दस्तयाब किया. मुनासिब, appropriate, ये सब कुछ आ जाता है.
All right. As a great granddaughter of Kotwal, I understand that
You understand,
language. I know the language.
Nobody can fight the administration, especially the police. Let me tell you.
I want to also understand the differences between the Operation Green Hunt and Samadhan, which has been launched by the Home Affairs right now. And in Samadhan is the sort of action plan. The ideal policy is called the National Policy Action Plan, and in which Samadhan is the doctrine that emphasizes. This is the doctrine under which they plan to eradicate Naxalism by 2026 next year. So I want to understand, why did the Green Hunt operation not be that successful, and what are the differences in the handling of it? If you can explain that to us, sir.
I would say the Green Hunt was reasonably successful. But
Okay.
in any such large operation,
Yes.
it cannot be 100% success always.
Okay.
Look where we were a few years ago.
Yes.
Look at the Jahanabad jail
Yes.
takeover.
Yes.
Look at the entire train being hijacked. 100 men and officers of the CRPF done to death, massacred.
Yes.
And look what Operation Green Hunt did. Of course, there were lessons to be learnt and drawn. The far superior weaponry that the police has today, it is because of the consequences and of the studies done, because of the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats that were conducted, and that gave us the strength and the teeth to the present operations. That is why the Home Minister today can claim, and of course, rightfully so, that there will be no Naxalism after 31st of March 2026. Samadhan focuses on other areas of rehabilitation, land reforms, job opportunities, creating India Reserve Battalion in that area, so that the dignity and the self-esteem is, if at all there is a lacuna, that is also addressed. Samadhans means giving relief, saka, and also solution. And I'm sure Samadhan and solution would be the long term. Any military action has to be a short term. It cannot be, no war can be humanity's permanent state. Therefore, whether it's Green Hunt or any other military operation, any paramilitary or police operation, that is only for a short while. At the end of the day, it has to be Samadhan. And Samadhan is very well calibrated, very well thought of, and has a tremendous planning behind it. And the best brains of the country are behind Operation Samadhan.
In fact, they have done a good job till now. Quite a few of these movements, they are almost dying out now. In fact, a lot of them are surrendering. A lot of them, I think they should be successful. If not by this date, around about the same date, I think they should be successful. Do you think that they should add or do something in this?
They are a success story, and I would like to compliment them for that. I've also seen the terrible days when these outlaws had a publication of their own, CPIM Update and CPIML.org, a website also. And something else that I remember, that apart from the fact that these people not only had these publications, a website, also were brazen enough that on their website they said that when they will come into power, there was something that is known as the Bhawanipur massacre, according to them. It was actually Bhawanipur, again in Mirzapur, that there was an encounter in which I believe 21 Naxalites were killed in the police action. But what they termed was the Naxalites was that it is a Bhawanipur massacre. When you go back home, see on the Google, and they said that when they will come back to power, they will hang the IG and the then Chief Minister. Well, if you get the opportunity, well, you are welcome. Do what you can. But if the law enforcement agency has, and you give them the occasion to take suitable action, well, you will not find them remiss, diligent, or indolent. They'll give you what you deserve.
Okay.
I hope I'm clear.
No. You're absolutely clear. I was just thinking of what you mentioned about these Naxals and how they were killed or whatever. Were there any stories that you know of wherein people reformed, and were those reforms successful in your personal experience? And what are some of the worst cases that you came across?
I have come across several cases. Yes, there were reformations and there were surrenders and there were surrenders. but there were surrenders also that were more by way of getting off the heat off their backs, but also going back to the forest and to larceny and to loot and to banditry. But if I would say that I know of 10 or 15 or maybe 25 cases of surrender, I think most of the cases surrenders were authentic and genuine. But there were 5, 6 cases that they were rogue surrenders and tried to deceive the police and extract money out of informers and the police.
So, you have mentioned military operations here. I want to understand when the paramilitary, when the police, and when the military, they conduct operations, what are the differences in these operations? Like
Not the
how
military. There was a misnomer. It's only the paramilitary, and that would include all the CRPF, BSF, and other paramilitary forces, and the police. They worked in conjunction. The paramilitary will seldom take up operation on its own because the local knowledge and the terrain and the legal requirement would say that the civil police and the local police will have to be part of that operation.
um, uh, the military also conducts terrorist
They do so
ambush,
maybe in the
yeah.
northeast and the Kashmir area,
Yeah, in that area.
but not in the Naxal
Not
areas.
okay. And so, multiple level of coordination is required to have to capture these people. Am I right?
Yes.
Multiple level coordination. Okay.
Coordination is very well structured. It's not a matter of conjecture or a matter of choice.
Okay.
It is very well structured. Who will be heading the joint command? As in Kashmir, there are absolutely no ego problems and there is no dilution of the chain of command.
So, do you also follow an A-line chain of command?
Of course, if there's a paramilitary that has to work under the civil police and the civil police leadership. Like there's a CRPF battalion, there's the battalion commander. With due respect, there'd be the DIGs also, but they will work under the local police and they work in, nobody is anybody's boss or anybody's subordinate, but they work in close coordination. But since the local police have the advantage of knowing the local people and the terrain and the laws, therefore they are actually in command, in charge of the operations.
Okay. One of the last questions I want to ask you is what is the future of this kind of urban radicalization or urban Naxalism and Islamic radicalization? What do you think is the future and what else can we do to combat this?
First of all, get over this business of vote bank politics and policy of appeasement.
Okay.
The day you get over it, you will be doing a service to the society and to the nation. But you would say that there is no appeasement and radicalization in the UK and US. Why is it happening there?
No, there's vote bank there also.
There is, but not as much as you see the election pending in the USA, election that is pending in the UK, but not to that extent as you hear. कि इशरत जहाँ ये बिहार की बेटी है, हर टेररिस्ट आपकी बेटी है, और हम पाकिस्तान से आए हैं. मैं बहरी सुग्रीव पियारा. You really have to
हमारा खून पानी, उनका खून खून.
अब what kind of fetish are some of our political parties have made that they see no wrong in their evil doings? That is the problem. Then the vote bank politics. उनके फातेहे में मुख्तार और अतीक कि आप पहुंच जाएंगे, लेकिन और कोई साइंटिस्ट मर जाएगा. हमारे भारत रत्न APJ अब्दुल कलाम, उनके नमाज जनाजा में कितने लोग गए थे, और कोई टेररिस्ट मर गया था बुरहान वानी, उसकी नमाज जनाजा कितने पहुंच गए थे. This shows that something has to be set right in the country. I do not know of a single living human being today in India who could be greater than Bharat Ratna APJ Abdul Kalam. And I would say that it's difficult to find somebody of his moral and scientific bent of mind, his intellectual and spiritual prowess. There have been many, but I would say that if there are very few people, and if people have reservations in naming Aurangzeb Road as APJ Abdul Kalam Road, that is where the problem arises. Even 1,000 Aurangzebs cannot equal APJ Abdul Kalam. And I'm sure you'd agree to that.
Yes, I agree. He was a very intelligent man who worked for the country, not
And
against
for-
the country.
For the common man.
For the common man, and a very humble man at that, who totally dedicated his life to the country.
Totally. And then to prevent radicalization, be on the alert. There are success stories in Singapore, in China, that we need to replicate in India also. A word to the wise is enough. There has to be some situation in the country where there should be zero tolerance, and where you would say that any problem that arises, it will not be dealt with an iron hand. it will be stamped out like a cigarette stabbed underneath the foot and rubbed out till it is stuffed out to absolute zero, if not negative. That is the situation that has to be there. A resolute nation should rise to the occasion and see that the enemy is not at the gates. Enemy has very much inside the gates.
Because if we keep letting people who commit violence against us, those who are continually doing ahimsa against us, if we keep letting them go, we are committing ahimsa against the normal masses by letting them go.
The definition of ahimsa has to be recalibrated. Ahimsa does not mean showing the other cheek. Agreed that if you show the other cheek, God Almighty has given you 2 hands and 2 legs also to put to appropriate use. That is also ahimsa. If somebody say, okay, slaps me, I will not allow that person to slap me on the other cheek. To the contrary, before he even tries that, he will be dealt with very, very appropriately. That is ahimsa. Ahimsa does not mean showing the other cheek. Ahimsa means कि जो हिंसा करते हैं उनके ऊपर हिंसा करना, राक्षसों के ऊपर हिंसा करना, दुष्ट दलन करना, रेडिकलाइज करने वालों के ऊपर हिंसा करना, वो है ahimsa. That is ahimsa. And let the girls know, and the girls' parents and the boys' parents know, please be ahimsaks. Please be ahimsaks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on our show and guiding us and giving us straight up points that people should remember. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Neena ji. Such a pleasure, Nona. So much of energy and enthusiasm in your show. God bless you always. May God always bless your path.
Thank you, sir.